this episode on pop pedagogy.
It's just bad teaching.
He was actually paying attention to who his students were.
He was obviously very intentional with how he approached Neville interacting with the Bogart.
We chose Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban.
Class dismissed.
Remember how scary your first days at school were, so I'd like you to be especially nice to Matilda.
Captain, my captain. Sit down, Mr. Anderson.
Are you going to teach us anything, or are we just going to sit here?
Welcome to Pop Pedagogy.
Hi, Nichole.
Hey, Melissa.
How's it going? What are you snacking on today?
It's going good. It's really hot outside, so I have a strawberry sorbet in my freezer that I'm watching the movie with.
Very nice. That
What
sounds
about
very
you?
refreshing. I have a can of Pringles that are flavored classic paprika. Paprika?
Ooh. Yeah. It sounds more elegant to say paprika.
Yeah.
So what movie are we watching today?
So we chose Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban as a first movie to watch for this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I hadn't seen it in so long, and I had forgotten how funny it was. I found it funny. It was so funny.
I was taking a lot of notes while watching the movie, and so I fast forwarded through some irrelevant scenes that weren't related to what was going on in the classroom just so I could get through it. But I noticed some things I hadn't noticed before. I don't know when the last time I saw this movie was, but I think it's one of the very first scenes when Harry walks into oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the name of the little hotel in Diagon Alley where they
the Leaky Cauldron.
The Leaky Cauldron. And there's a guy sitting at a table that the camera pans past him, and he's reading Stephen Hawking, A Brief History of Time. And it just, to me, I never noticed that before, for one. And for two, do wizards give a shit about physics and science? Maybe he's reading it as for funsies, you know what I mean?
Arthur Weasley is obsessed with humans and finds us so endearing.
Oh, Stephen Hawking's so cute. All this physics stuff, the theory of everything.
Silly muggles.
Silly muggles and their time-space continuums.
Yeah, oh, they're so cute.
I was amused by the small details that I noticed because I was paying close attention and trying to see things and take notes. So yeah, it was fun to rewatch. Maybe a little bit of housekeeping. Harry Potter has become somewhat controversial recently because of the author of it. So for the purpose of this podcast and some of the other media that we'll review, the creators of the media might be problematic. So this
is why we can't have nice things.
I know. For the purpose of this podcast, we're not considering the author's intent or purpose. We're just looking at the representation of education and pedagogical approaches in the media concerned. So we're not going to talk about the controversies. We're just going to talk about what we see on the screen.
Yes. So maybe we should do just a quick recap what happens in the movie and who is the character that we are paying attention to. Sounds this good. Time. So the movie is Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, and this is the third movie in the Harry Potter series, and it follows Harry Potter and his friends on their third year at Hogwarts, and they have this new Defense Against the Dark Art teacher who is Remus Lupin, and he's the new guy in town, he's cool, and then there's this prisoner that has escaped from Azkaban, and he's trying to supposedly get to Hogwarts to kill Harry Potter, and so everyone's on edge about it, and things start happening.
There's Dementors, they hire the Dementors.
There's the Dementors,
Hogwarts.
Yeah, so they're hovering all over Hogwarts, and then there's a few plot twists, and the bad guy is not the bad guy.
Oh, we should say there will be spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen the movie or read the books. We will be discussing spoilers, so get over it if you haven't. For sure. If you haven't seen it.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think at the beginning, Harry meets the Dementors come on the train, and he faints when he comes into contact with, or when the Dementor comes into the train car, and that becomes
he has this traumatic encounter
that comes up later. And then I guess the other big plot points, or some significant plot points, are that Hermione is given this time travel device so she can take more classes because she's a gifted student, and she needs extra stimulation.
And this movie just reminded me that everybody's alive because of Hermione. She's the real, MVP throughout the whole series, over and over and over.
And I was thinking about, I mean, this might be getting into a little bit off the Lupin topic and more into Hogwarts as an educational institution, but I feel like Hogwarts as an educational institution fails its students quite significantly because, for example, Hermione is the one saving people's asses because she's an autodidact and she can teach herself. Yeah. And so what are these other students learning? Unless you're an autodidact, you will fail Hogwarts.
Yeah, no, and, during that movie, there's a scene where, Snape takes over the class because Lupin is a werewolf, spoiler, and he's, what is the difference between an animagus and a werewolf? And Hermione replies, and he's, can't you just keep it shut, dude? -5 points for you, So on top of that, knowing things and being, kind of a nerd is sanctioned in a way. It's not sanctioned, cool.
Yeah.
And it happens in real life as well. In some instances,
it's just bad teaching. So. I mean, and that's what we'll get into. But what's good teaching and what's bad teaching, and how is it represented in this film? And I think Snape is a horrible teacher. There's nothing good about his teaching methods. If I were the headmaster of the school, I would fire him. And if you need him around for protecting the chosen one or whatever, then give him an administrative job. Yeah, give him an administrative role. Why are you having him in the classroom where he's doing so much damage?
But luckily, we're going to focus on Remus Lupin, who we felt more positive.
Well, I think both of us, before we rewatched the movie, we were both on the fence about him from our memory, right? So in my memory, I felt he probably wasn't a great teacher and showed a lot of favoritism towards Harry. So my opinion changed over the course of watching the movie, but that was my kind of bias coming in, was that I didn't think he was going to have a great pedagogical approach.
Yeah, I didn't remember much of his interactions the way that, he was really watching the movie for the first time in some aspects, but I also had that feeling of, no, he wasn't that great. Because I remembered him as, the friend of the dad, and, this really cool group of dudes. I remember him as somehow something of a daredevil, and not very responsible, not very careful as a teacher, as an adult. Yeah. But I also changed my mind as I was watching the movie. But what was it that stood out for you about Lupin as a teacher?
Well, one of the things that stood out about him for me was that when I was specifically watching the scenes where he's giving a lesson, there's the scene where he's teaching about the Bogarts. I wrote down his lesson plan. So I was watching what he was doing and I was writing it as if it were a lesson plan. And his lesson plan's on point. I'll read what I have here, but he gets the class warmed up with, some hooks. He asks the students if anyone knows what a Bogart is. Some of them do. He asks them if anyone knows what a Bogart looks like. Of course, Hermione knows the answer, so she says it out without raising her hand or being called on. But she says no one knows what a Bogart looks like because they take the form of your greatest fear. And then I wrote down that there could have been perhaps a missed opportunity for peer-to-peer learning with that. Instead of doing a whole class kind of engagement, maybe he could have had them discuss in pairs what about Bogarts or whatever. But
because also these are pretty large classes.
There's a lot of students in the class, and they're just standing around, and then Hermione's always answering.
Yeah. But still, what you said, it was kind of student center, and it started from a place of inquiry, right?
And then he tells. So after they discuss what they know already about Bogart. So he's kind of doing a KLW kind of situation. What do you know? What do you want to know? And then going back, what did you learn? But he doesn't ever get to the end. But he does what you already know about Bogart. So we've gone through that kind of part. And then he tells the students, okay, there is a charm that exists that can repel a Bogart. So he set it up, what is a Bogart? Okay, there's a charm that exists to repel Bogart, and that's what we're going to practice. So he tells the students what they're going to do in the lesson after getting them interested in the lesson. So that's good practice. And then he says, okay, we're going to practice without our wands first. So
Yeah. There's a lot of really nice scaffolding. Yeah, for
that's
sure.
what I really liked about it. So they practice without the wands, and then he does a modeling with a safe student. So I think he chooses Neville because he thinks Neville's fear is not going to be that bad.
Yeah. And also, and I don't know if you agree, but I felt it quite touching that he chose Neville, because that gave me, and this isn't shown in the movies, but that made me think that he was actually paying attention to who his students were. And he noticed that Neville, maybe was a little bit shy. He was in the back of the room. Maybe he was, kind of made fun of. And he decided to be intentionally next to Neville, guide them closely through the steps, and also make an example of him. And in that way, it strengthens his self-confidence. And I thought I noticed what stood out to me the most was this kind of small displays of Lupin creating this environment of psychological safety for their students. There's a lot of positive reinforcement, a lot of, hey, that was a good question. That's a good observation. That's very wise. Pay attention to this. So, and I think that built trust with, Harry, and I'm going to assume other students that he had these close interactions with. Right?
I completely agree with that. I think that it was a conscious choice to choose Neville. I think if you're just watching the movie and you're not thinking about teaching approaches, you don't notice these things. But I think him choosing Neville first and demonstrating how to use the charm, you use the incantation to repel the Bogart. I think that's a very intentional choice. And then the second thing that happens is after he demonstrates with Neville how to repel the Bogart, he has the students get in a line and each one should try one by one to repel the Bogart. To me, I thought this was a little bit of, if I were a teacher, I wouldn't want to have all of these 30 students standing in a line with students in the back waiting their turn, because mischief will start to happen at that point, right? Kids who are waiting with nothing to do get up to no good.
But you're not teaching.
You're not teaching.
Though. I think that's a pretty engagement kind of.
But maybe he could have had them doing something, practicing the incantation before it's their turn to come to the front, or doing something instead of just standing in line. And then, so the students are...
calling them in groups.
Something like that. But for the most part, his lesson is pretty legit. And then Harry comes to the front of the group, and Lupin steps in and stops him from confronting the Bogart. And then he dismisses the class. Not everyone has had a turn to confront the Bogart, but after Harry gets to the front, he steps in and dismisses the class. So I think here, I think he does some of the good things, and I think he misses some opportunities. So he was obviously very intentional with how he approached Neville interacting with the Bogart. He should have thought ahead of how he was going to have Harry engage with the Bogarts, or whether he was or not, and to explain to Harry ahead of time what he should do differently, because of Harry has trauma. The things he's seen and afraid of in this world are significantly worse than most people, and he needs an accommodation. He needs an IEP, or an individualized education plan for some activities, this one. And so, Lupin, I would give him a lot of gold stars, but this is where I would say keep trying. You probably needed to be more intentional with this student who has different needs than the rest of the students, because what happened was you didn't think about it ahead of time. You had to step in the middle of the lesson, and then some of the students didn't get their chance to fight the Bogart at the end.
Yeah. I mean, he tells Harry at a later scene that, right? Because Harry's, why do you interrupt it? He goes, I thought you were gonna, I thought Voldemort was gonna come out, So he kind of, he realizes that halfway through the lesson, as you said. But also Lupin was part of that first encounter that Harry had with the mentors. So yeah, so either way, he should have kind of known. But I think he was still on top of things in a way to keep the environment controlled, because that was very experiential learning, right? He puts them in front of a real threat,
and the scaffolding was good. He had them. He told them about it. He had the background information. He had them practice without the wands. He modeled how to do it, and then he had them practice. So all of that, gold stars.
And he encouraged, he encouraged this very attentive observation, and he was there supporting and everything. And I think that something that I really about that scene in particular was throughout the scene, you could see him having fun as well. He was in the glee that their students were feeling whenever they turned, the scary thing into something ridiculous. And I thought that was also something about him building that psychological safety for his students.
Because this is his first lesson ever with these kids, right? And
he was super vulnerable in that way of showing his emotions, not staying completely. He wasn't establishing this relationship of power between him and the students. He was, hey, this is fun, and we're all having fun, and you guys are
And
awesome,
it's a really good, I think, lesson to have for, I don't know what the curriculum is for Defense Against the Dark Arts third years.
Who knows? Hermione apparently knows.
But let's say let's imagine what the curriculum is. Okay, by the end of your third year in Defense Against the Dark Arts, you should be able to repel a Bogart. You should be able to, I don't know, identify different types of dark beings. I don't know what the...
Yeah, and the difference between the werewolf...
Yeah, this kind of stuff, okay? Right? So if that's the curriculum, I think the Bogart is a good first lesson, because you said it establishes the psychological safety. It's also kind of good icebreaker for the students to interact with each other as well, because they're being a little bit vulnerable and showing what they're afraid of. And they're also showing how to turn something scary funny. So there's, I feel like it's creating a really nice classroom dynamic that even Malfoy can't disrupt too much. You know what I mean? He's sitting in the corner and he's this is stupid, meh. But he's not as disruptive as he usually is.
Yeah. I also found it, and again, the movies about Harry Potter, of course, so that's who we see on screen the most. But I found, the kind of tutoring, the close mentoring that he provides to Harry about the Patronus, just also an example of going that extra mile, and connecting their students and meeting them where they are, and taking them, helping their students go through that, the zone of proximal development, seeing where they are and kind of pushing them to get to the next level, but also, making sure that things are safe, and also kind of fostering that intrinsic, leveraging that intrinsic motivation that he sees in the students.
And I think he would do it for other students besides Harry. We see Harry, but we also see that Harry has sought him out to ask these questions, right? Harry is approaching Lupin to ask. It's not Lupin saying, hey, Harry, come sit, let me mentor you. So I think any student who would have...
So the intrinsic motivation.
Who approached him with extra questions or clarifications, it seems he would provide that. That was one of the questions that I was, asking myself as I was watching. Is Lupin showing Harry favoritism? Is he treating all of his students equally? Does every student in his class have the same chance to succeed in his class? And I think that's true. And what I see Lupin doing with Harry is giving him accommodations based on the needs he has for this specific class, which is Defense Against the Dark Arts, which Harry has, a specific relationship with.
I mean, I want to believe that he does cater to his students' strengths and, accommodation and needs, right? If we see that interaction with Harry and with Neville, an example of how he is with other students, which also reminds me that being a good teacher is really hard.
So
work,
much work.
Right?
It's
Because also even in that first scene when Lupin shows up and he's I don't do you think that he was actually asleep on the train carriage, or that he was just because I thought he's definitely not asleep. He's listening in on that conversation, but then he let the Dementor go on way too long if he wasn't asleep, because the Dementor was sucking the life out of Harry already. Lupin decides, oh shit, So that's kind of what made me. I was like,
that's a good point. Yeah,
because he sprang to action. He's kind of a badass, but also was
maybe he was, or maybe he didn't realize that. If he was, I guess this is another question: is how Hogwarts as an institution manages teacher-student interactions, because should a teacher in a train car with students be asleep? You know what I mean?
Should they be in the same
car, or if they are, should they be supervising? Should be you know what I mean?
Exactly.
These are kids.
Do they hold
These
any responsibility?
Primary school kids. They're 10, 11 years old kids. So I worked in a boarding school when I was a young teacher, and our interactions with the students were extremely regulated, because it's not only to keep the students safe, but also to keep you safe. You cannot be alone I wouldn't be alone with students in a car you know what I mean? There would need to be another adult, another adult there, or it would need to be processed out ahead. It would need to be agreed upon ahead of time who's supervising, who's going to be where. There would probably be someone walking up and down the halls to just check everything's going okay. I don't know. I guess in the wizarding world of Harry Potter, there's not sexual predators or something. I don't know, but you wouldn't put any teacher alone in a car with 3 10-year-olds without there being some kind of process around it. So
I mean, if you remember that the main security that they have in Hogwarts is spells and a dude and his cat.
That's true.
When there are no Dementors, that's it.
Well, they have prefects, I guess,
system.
who are, but they don't have house parents. I was a house parent, so my job was to make sure the kids weren't sneaking out at night. And
well, they have the paintings.
They do. I guess the paintings are kind of supervising things too. So I mean, I guess this is a tangent on Hogwarts as an educational institution. We should maybe do an episode just on Hogwarts as a boarding school.
We'll come back to Hogwarts at some point. But I mean, we're reaching the end of the episode, so maybe I guess one question that I want to ask you is, what, as a teacher, what is the main thing that you can take away from this character, and that other teachers can take away from this character? If you had to, just sum it up, just the most valuable thing that teachers can learn from Lupin as a teacher, what would
I think Lupin's very fair. I mean, first of all, I think he plans his lessons. Which is not all the teachers at Hogwarts do. And I think you can also see that in this movie. Hagrid does not plan his lessons. Professor Trelawney, I had big problems with Snape.
Snape does it out of spite.
Professor Trelawney and her lesson with the reading the tea leaves goes off the rails. She's such an irresponsible teacher. Hagrid goes off the rails. He's an irresponsible teacher. Also, Hagrid gets promoted to teacher. My other question was, what qualifications do you need to become a teacher at Hogwarts? You just need to be around, be friends with Dumbledore? I don't know.
Mary, you have to be solid with Dumbledore.
Because I don't think Hagrid has been taught teaching methodology. You know what I mean? He's got some cool ideas and he's just, let's go with it. But Lupin, it's very clear that he thought about and planned his lesson ahead of time. I think he's very fair in that he provides accommodation to students who need them. Harry, he also chastised. This was one of the things that came up when I was looking at, does he show Harry favoritism? Because when he comes across Harry with the Marauders map in the hallway after hours, he gives him a big chiding, and he's you've put yourself in danger, you've put the rest of the students in danger. You know, he takes the map away.
This is not cool.
So he dresses him down. He doesn't show him, you know, he's real and he's fair, and I think that also contributes to the trust that the students have with him, because when you know, even if, you know, he has a personal relationship with Harry, it probably he wanted to maybe be a little bit nicer to him in that moment, but he knew he needed to present a very fair approach to breaking the rules, and he did so. So I thought that was a good kind of representation of how sometimes teachers have their own kids as their students, and they need to figure out how to treat all of the students in the class fairly, even if you have a personal relationship with one of them. And I think that Lupin demonstrates that quite well. I think the way he scaffolds his lessons is very good. I think he can use a few more kind of small group approaches. It seems to be all the teachers at Hogwarts seem to do whole class instruction all the time. That's all they do.
That's just how Hogwarts works. Well, except potions.
Yeah, that's true. They do go into groups in potions class. Yeah, Lupin does stick to kind of whole class instruction, and I think he could differentiate that a little bit. I think he does do good differentiation in terms of helping students achieve the goals within their abilities and understanding of of what they can do. I think we see that with how he works with Neville, how he works with Harry. And okay, I think those are my main points. What about you?
I mean, yes, +1, what you said. I think for me, the thing that just kept popping up in all of the scenes where he showed up was, you know, how important that aspect of social learning was to his practice. Mm-hmm. You know, that was reflected through his, you know, group, the modeling, the scaffolding, the promoted observation, but also just that attention to building psychological safety for their students, and acknowledging that, you know, you can show yourself, you can be real, you can play music in the classroom, you know, you can join in the fun, and that also has a positive impact on your students' learning as well. And just that, I think I'm looking at my notes, just connecting on a personal level, you know, because again, what we see of how he develops his relationship with Harry is, you know, I knew your dad, I knew your mom, you know, they were cool, reaffirming the emotions that he saw in his students, in those interactions with Neville, with Harry, and also staying humble. You know, at some point, I can't remember what he was talking about, but he says something, you know, I am not an expert on this, but this is my take, you know, and I think that is something that growing up, and I think that is a paradigm that is changing, but that the fact that teachers don't have to know it all, you know, you can say that you don't know this or you don't know that, and that is okay for your students to acknowledge that, you know, you can also Google shit.
Yeah. It's about asking the right questions and helping them to discover the answers, even if you, as the teacher, don't know the answer.
Yeah, and in that scene, even the last scene where I thought at the beginning that, Sirius Black was the bad guy, and I discovered new information, and now I'm wrong, you know, and I changed my mind, and that that is always very powerful to see adults do.
Yeah, I wrote down in my notes growth mindset for Lupin, because he often also when he's talking to Harry, he's helping Harry think through his self-doubt. Harry has a lot of self-doubt. And Lupin is, yes, but you did this, and this is how you're learning, and this is how you can do better.
And I think, and I do think it comes back to the fact also that Lupin, as, you know, a character, his story is just really sad. You know, he's a werewolf. He's discriminated against. He knows that, like, he could get sacked anytime. He's experienced all of these. He experienced heartbreak. You know, so I think that made him a very just empathetic kind of human and teacher. And so
it pisses me off that he resigned at the end. I asked myself, was it irresponsible of him to resign? He's obviously the best teacher Hogwarts has ever seen. I think, based on my observation. I wonder also, as an administrator, Dumbledore let him resign instead of working. You know, a school is a community. The parents and the students and the teachers all need to understand each other. And Dumbledore doesn't take the opportunity to deal with the parents' fear of the people who are different, or, you know, it would be
because Dumbledore,
you know what I mean?
Shitty, yeah, right.
Yeah,
he
it's irresponsible of him.
Yeah.
He shouldn't let a minority be discriminated against and lose their job because of the fears of the parents. That's not okay. So that was, you know, something that I like demerit for Dumbledore.
And what about Lupin? Do we give him a gold star or a demerit? I mean, I would say gold star for sure.
I think Lupin, in the context of Hogwarts, gets all the gold stars for me. And I was surprised too, because I thought he would be a keep trying at the beginning before watching it. But after watching it, I was on board with Lupin. He needs to come back. He needs to be a teacher at Hogwarts.
He's a good one.
He should probably be headmaster. I don't know.
I'm glad that you enjoyed my pick of movie for this episode. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So do you want to share what's next for the next episode?
Yeah, next we're going to inner city United States. We're going to look at Sister Mary Clarence and Sister Act 2 and see how she does, what her teaching style of teaching music is, and what we can learn from her as a teacher.
Awesome. I'm excited. Thank you so much for picking that movie.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Grab your snacks, watch Sister Act 2, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Yeah, and if you have any more thoughts about Lupin as a teacher or any other teachers in Hogwarts, also let us know.
Share your thoughts. You can check the website for additional resources related to the topics covered in this episode. Tell us what we should review in the future.
Bye, Nichole.
Bye!